Hey everybody, this is Tell the Truth Sports Radio. I'm going to tell you the truth about the world of sports, especially when it comes to the NFL. I have the renowned author of the and Buffalo Bills historian Jeffrey Miller, who did a terrific job. I'm going to show that interview right after I do this segment, but I want to break down the biggest game of the week, and that is the Jets and Bills. Dolphins and Chargers are big. Uh, Dolphins and Chargers, that's about teams that have to prove how good they are because they haven't completely lived up to. I won't say Miami hasn't, but that was just a bad loss, especially the way Tua played last week. And then the Chargers, they're not healthy and they haven't achieved what I thought they would be. I thought they would be in a team that could make a run to at least the AFC Championship. I'm not sure. That's going to prove that's a prove it game. I get to see who's for real and who's not in that game. But now let's get to the Jets and Buffalo. Mike White had a great game last week. He missed the receiver. He missed Wilson going deep. He had him, and he missed him, and it cost the game. But he's been fantastic. And now they don't have Bryce Hall. They really need him against Buffalo. Now Buffalo has to run the ball better. Singletary and Cook, they got to be I would like to see him a little more committed to the run. I don't want to see Josh Allen. He's a great runner, running in between the tackles, big, strong quarterback. I don't want to see him get hurt. Vaughn Miller got hurt. When it comes to stars, I want to see stars for stars. The Bengals got the stars. The Dolphins got Tyreek Hill and Waddle. I don't want to see Hill and Waddle get hurt. I want to see the stars play the stars. I want to see Miami have to go to Buffalo and win. The Jets have to go to Buffalo with their defense and win. And then does Kansas City have to go to Buffalo, or does Buffalo have to go back to Kansas City? I was talking to Jeffey Miller, and selfishly, I want Buffalo to go to Arrowhead because that's such a great atmosphere. And the Bills are a tough road team, and it's just perfect. They're playing in Arrowhead with that crowd, and with Buffalo, can they slay the dragon? If you're going to do it, you want to walk into the other team's building. Historically, the Lakers did that to Boston in '85, and Boston had to do that against the Yankees. And it's just, can the Bills have that signature win that gets them to the championship? It's going to be hard without their closer, Von Miller, but that's going to be interesting. I like them against the Jets this week at home. Close game, but the Jets physically gave Buffalo a beating, and Buffalo's going to want an exact payback. They're going to be fired up at home. The Jets have a great defense, but I think McDermott's going to look at the tape and make whatever adjustments he has to make. And can Diggs get open on Sauce Gardner? Sauce Gardner got burnt for the first play of the game, and then he was good after that. And their secondary is fantastic, the Jets. But if Buffalo could commit to the run and get the Jets in a little more of a vanilla formation, and that allows Josh Knox, I think Knox is going to be important. If you could show more variety in your offense than just trying to go to Diggs and Gabe Davis, and allow Knox to eat a little bit, and then Singletary and Cook run, and then that allows a little more one-on-one matchups with your receivers. Buffalo could survive, and then they have to get pressure on White, and you better not give White a chance to beat you. He made some great stick throws. He throws guys open. That's the sign of a really good quarterback. But I like Buffalo to take care of business. Up next, I have the great author Jeffery Miller. Did a terrific job in this interview. And if you love football and you love NFL history, sit back and enjoy this interview and listen to him.
Am I too bright?
Yes, we're here. This is Tell the Truth Sports Radio, and I can't get another person to tell more of the truth than this guy, author Jeffrey Miller. He is a historian for the Buffalo Bills, and I wanted to get him on because Buffalo's really having a nice, good run of a couple of years. And I want to go down memory lane. And I just watched the YouTube on the Bills' history. It's a really good history. And I want to start off the early years, and we're going to go all the way to now. I want to talk about the first early championship years when Jeff Kemp, before he was a senator, was on the Chargers. They got rid of him.
Mhm.
and he went to the Bills, and they ended up having
Right.
to play the Chargers. And I'm pretty sure he's quite motivated in that
Oh, yeah.
championship game. Now, from what I heard, there was a tackle on Keith Lincoln that changed the game.
Yeah, that's correct. The 1964 championship game was played in Buffalo, and like you said, the Bills were hosting the Chargers, Kemp's former team. So yeah, he was highly motivated to win that one. And during that game, the Chargers were actually leading, and at one point there was a flare pass out in the left flat where he had to go up in the air to catch it, and just as he was about to catch the ball, Mike Stratton came in and hit him right in the ribs, and it's called the hit heard around the world. Lincoln ends up dropping the ball. He cracks several ribs. He's out of the game. Their best player's gone. Lance Allworth isn't playing that day either, so they have no offense. And that totally changed the complexion of the game, and the Bills went on to win. So.
And they went back to back. And this was a classic tale of better defense versus great offense. And the defense ended up holding the day, and they ended up winning back-to-back championships. They went to San Diego to repeat. And I believe they shut them out, right?
Yeah. And the amazing thing is, when they went out to San Diego the next year, they were without their top three wide receivers. Dubanian, Bass, and Charlie Ferguson were all out of the game. So they were going with Bo Roberson, who they had picked up midseason in a trade, and Ed Rukowski. But in that game, they decided to go with a two tight end offense. They went with Ernie Warlick on one side and Paul Costa on the other. And they had traded away Cookie Gilchrist, who was their superstar the year before, or at the beginning of the year. So he wasn't there either. So they were going with Billy Joe, who was who they got in the trade, who was a pretty good fullback, but he wasn't Cookie Gilchrist. Mm-hmm. So the Bills' offense was not at its best. So it was totally relying on their defense. They go out to San Diego, play the Chargers, who are favored by, 12, 15 points, and they shut them out 23-0. So, yeah, Jack Kemp felt pretty good about beating his old team twice in a row in the championship game.
Yes, he did. And also, before I get into their following year, Cookie Gilchrist is the greatest running back that's not known as far as getting his due. And I heard Jim Brown just talk glowingly about Cookie Gilchrist. And I watched the AFL documentary, and I was like, whoa, who's this guy? And I was like, wow, this guy's good. He's strong. He was fast, too.
Yeah. What Eddie Abramowski, who was the Bills trainer, described him as 251, 54-inch chest, 31-inch waist. This guy was a mountain. This guy was sculpted, and he didn't take guff from anybody. And that was a good thing and a bad thing, because he was a stud. He could play today. You talk about the modern athlete with a lot of ego and a lot of pride. That was Cookie Gilchrist. He didn't take it from anybody. And what they would say about him is, if you're blocking for him, you get out of his way, because he'll run you over even if you're blocking for him, because he's so determined to just get down the field. They call him the equivalent, the AFL equivalent of Jim Brown.
Yes.
And somewhat, no, I'm not going to dispute that Jim Brown was the greatest of all time. But Cookie Gilchrist did things that Jim Brown didn't do, and one of those things was block for his teammates. Cookie Gilchrist may have been one of those people that was a prima donna, but he did anything. He would do whatever it took to win, and if that meant blocking for his fellow players, that's what he did. So that's the one thing that Cookie had over Jim Brown.
The teammates loved him too. Now you're looking to three-peat. You play the Chiefs in your building, and you're really excited. You're thinking you're going to win and end up playing the Lombardi Packers in the Super Bowl, in the first Super Bowl. But what happened in that game?
Well, there were a couple of things. First of all, the Bills were getting kind of long in the tooth by then. They were getting a little older. They'd had a lot of injuries. Cookie was gone, of course, still. And, Jack Kemp was getting a little older. And there were two fatal mistakes during that game. One was towards the end of the first half, the Bills are marching down the field. They're getting ready to take the go-ahead touchdown. It's tied 7-7, and Kemp throws an interception in the end zone. But Johnny Robinson returns 70 yards. It sets up a Chiefs field goal. They kick it. They go up 10-7 at halftime. So you got a 10-point swing right there. So They come out in the second half, and the Chiefs now have the lead. The Bills are kind of demoralized from that. But there was another thing that happened at the beginning of the game, and that was the Chiefs kicked off, and it was kind of a short kick. So one of the up men, Dudley Meredith, who was a 290-pound lineman, fielded the ball and started running up the field, and gets tackled, and he fumbles.
Wow.
For their first game. So the Bills, or for their first score. So the Bills, they lose the ball on their first drive, and the Chiefs score. So they totally flip the field at that point. And there was another point in the third quarter where Haygood Clark had a ball right in his hands, and he would have had a pick six from 80 yards out. He dropped it. So there were these little mistakes along the way so the game seems like it was really lopsided, but it really wasn't as lopsided as the score would suggest it was. But my opinion is, I've got the game film and I've watched the whole game, and the Chiefs were the better team. I mean, you look at their defense, you look at their whole team, and they got Hall of Famers up and down.
Yeah.
The Bills have one. Billy Shaw is the only Hall of Famer from that team, which is a shame because there's a few others that belong. But with the Chiefs, you had Bobby Bell and Len Dawson and John Robinson and, just Buck Buchanan. So you just had all these guys. So just a great team.
Yeah, definitely. But a lot of the players, I was watching the documentary, they say, if we could have just got in that Super Bowl and made a couple of plays in Kansas City game, we would have been a better matchup against the Packers. What do you think matchup-wise?
Yeah, the Bills kind of ran a Green Bay style offense. They were definitely a 3-yard in a cloud of dust kind of team. They had a good running game. They Ray Carlton, and they had Bobby Burnett, who was the Rookie of the Year that year, and Mike Garrett from the Chiefs was the runner-up. So they were pretty evenly matched. But the Bills really, that ground game was really more their style. Len Dawson was more of the passer. He had some good receivers. Otis Taylor was on the team at the time, and he had Chris Burford, and he had Fred Urbanus, who is a borderline Hall of Fame tight end. So they had a really good team. They had a really good offensive line. But the Bills, they had their strength was their running game. Their strength, they had a great offensive line too. They had L.B. Miller, Billy Shaw, Stu Barber, Joe O'Donnell. It was a really good offensive line. So the Bills might have matched up better with the Packers, but we'll never know that.
Definitely. Now, they did get long in the tooth, and then they had to rebuild. John Ralston didn't. They got OJ, and he didn't like with John Ralston. Lou Saban comes back. Now you got a different offensive line. You got the Electric Company, and they come in. And 73, he has all-time rushing record. And I saw him destroy my Steelers, run right over him, 94-yard touchdown, running past everybody.
Yeah.
They did again in 75. And Mean Joe Green talked about that. He's like, the juice got us, man.
Yeah.
Then in 74, you had a good year. And in 75, you had a good year, but I believe you lost to the Colts, and it kind of set you back a little bit at home. You had a big lead, and then you missed the playoffs, and they point to that game. That kind of was a turning point for both teams. Is this true?
Yeah, I seem to recall we were ahead by 28 points, and they came back and beat us. It was a demoralizing victory. And, going back a year, your Steelers were the team that beat the Bills in the playoffs that year.
Well, they shut the juice down. That was the one time they did. Buffalo scored first, and then Rocky Bleier scored, and Pittsburgh went on to win the Super Bowl.
That's right.
And I thought, just going back, that Buffalo would follow that up, but 75 sent them back, and then 76 and 77, I guess OJ got hurt. And then he ended up getting traded to the Niners, and then you're in rebuilding mode. And then you get Chuck Knox, ground Chuck, which was perfect. And then you get Joe Cribs from Auburn, and then you get my guy Frank Lewis from my Steelers, and Butler, who was really good, and Ferguson started to develop. Now you got a new group, and they almost beat Cincinnati. Ferguson got hurt against San Diego in 80. He was trying to play with a hurt ankle. And they went to San Diego and almost beat them. So you were almost there those years, right?
Yeah, it was disappointing. We had some really good teams, and we had a really lovable team too. They were very popular because Buffalo's a lot like Pittsburgh. We're blue collar. We like rough, tough guys. We like lunch bucket types of guys who come to work every day. You had guys that weren't superstars. I mean, Frank Lewis was not considered a superstar in the NFL. but he was one of the best receivers in the league when he was playing in Buffalo. Guys like that are, we love guys that are unsung. We hate it when our guys aren't noted, aren't getting the notoriety on ESPN or whatever. So we have guys like that. We have a fun-loving team. We have Conrad Dobler. We have Fred Smirlis. We have Philip Villapiano. These guys are clowns, but they're great players. We have Isaiah Robertson. We have, we're just a loaded team.
Because you had some former Rams. He brought some Rams with him, Chuck Knox.
Right.
And he wanted veterans, and you guys won right away. And you finally beat the Dolphins because you went 10 years without beating the Dolphins. And you beat the Dolphins at home. I believe you tore down the goalpost.
That's right.
Okay.
We beat them in the home opener. The last game we beat them was the last game of 1969. And the first game we beat them again was the first game in 1980s. So that whole year, that whole decade of the 70s was lose, 20 straight games. So that game where we beat them, and we beat them soundly.
Yeah.
Here in Buffalo. And Jeff Nixon, who was our free safety, had 4 takeaways in that game, which is still a record. Three interceptions and a fumble recovery. But Joe Cribbs was his first game as a Bill, and he established himself. What could have been? Joe Cribbs is that one guy in Bill's history. Is like what could have been if he had stayed here, if he hadn't gone to the USFL, or the WFL rather, and what might have been with that guy. He was so good. He was.
Yeah, and then before I get into the rebuild with Jim Kelly, you hadn't beat him in Miami in a while, and Marino comes along and he's on fire that game. And I believe Ferguson outplayed him, and you guys won 38-35 and finally beat him in Miami. Yeah. And that was a great, I do remember that game where it's back and forth. And that was when I first got to see Marino. Yeah. And he was on fire, and Ferguson matched him, and you finally got him in Miami. And then the Kelly years when Kelly didn't want to come, and then he finally came after he left the USFL. And Bill Polian did a terrific job of building Bennett and Conlon and getting Bruce Smith and Kelly. And I saw Thurman Thomas at Oklahoma State with in the backfield with Barry Sanders. I believe they beat South Carolina in a Gator Bowl. And I was like, wow, that Thurman Thomas is good. Yeah. Because Barry Sanders was the backup for Oklahoma State. Yeah. And then he comes along. And you guys were, before you became the Resilient Bills, you were the Bickering Bills. So I want you to tell the audience about that.
Well, there were a lot of egos on that team. Mm-hmm. And if it wasn't for Marv Levy, it might have just totally turned into a brawl. But yeah, the Bickering Bills, there were some problems. And what really brought all of it to light, because apparently there was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that the fans didn't know and the media didn't talk about. Well, what really brought it to light was there was a game against the Colts where Jim Kelly got sacked, and he went on TV and said, he blamed Howard Ballard, the tackle, for missing the block, and Howard Ballard was a pretty popular guy on the team, and but Kelly thought, well, I'm the quarterback, you can't touch me. Well, the players said, well, we're going to teach this guy a lesson. And, Thurman Thomas went on, TV during the week, and somebody said, what's going on with the Bills? What's the problem? And he said, quarterback. And, maybe, Jim Kelly might not have been the reason they were losing, but you can't have your leader going out and, calling people out on, TV. So that's what really brought it to light. And, there were some other problems going on, but mainly the problem with the Buffalo Bills of that era was there were so many superstars, and everybody wanted a piece of the pie. Everybody wanted to be on TV. Everybody wanted commercials. Everybody wanted, to be an all-pro and play and everything. And they were just so good, but they didn't always get along. And even if you talk to them now, they're all friends, but every once in a while you get one of them alone, and they might make a little snide remark about one of the other ones about and it's kind of fun to hear, but you realize they're human beings too. You think they're these superstars that, they're kind of detached from all of it, but, they're human beings, and they have feelings, and they have all the same desires that, they have the egos and they have pride. So,
but Tally and Kelly and Bruce Smith and Thurman, these are some big time egos, and they're great players. So And great credit to Marv Levy for keeping them together. Then the following year, you make the run, you get to the Super Bowl, and you play the Giants. And in my mind, I'm like, man, I don't think the Giants, as good as their defense is, I don't know if they can keep up with Buffalo. And it started out good, but then the pace of the game flipped, and it became more of a physical kind of a giant ball control type of a game.
Mm-hmm.
And then you were driving, and everybody blames Norwood for the miss. You could have got closer, number one. Number two, back in those days, that was a harder kick because kickers weren't as strong. They can make these 59-yard kicks now. They're bigger and stronger.
Right.
So it's grass field, and he had to put a little extra oomph into that kick, and now you have a tendency to pull it. So that I didn't think he was going to make it to begin with, because I said this is kind of far out back in those days, and it went wide right, and the Bills really kind of they consoled him. I love the job that they did and the fans did when he went to the rally, and how much love they had for him.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of players said, "Listen, it wasn't you. I could have made some tackles. I could have did this." The way they rally around him. I know you have acquaintances with Norwood. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, he's been treated unfairly.
Yeah.
It's a long kick. It's natural grass, like you said, and it's under the most pressure-packed situation you could ever think of. As far as athletics go, and and the kick certainly had enough leg. He got it up high enough that he could have made it from 55 if it was that far out, but it went wide, and he hung on for another year, and he was still a good kicker, but and he went to the Pro Bowl that year too. He was an All-Pro kicker, so he definitely knew how to kick. He's not a joke, and that's unfortunately what's become. There's a couple of movies that are kind of loosely based on that situation. Ace Ventura and Buffalo 66 is another one, but I've gotten to know him, and I've done a few book signing events with him, and one of the things that really makes your skin crawl is when you see people come up to him with a photograph and say, "Would you mind signing it wide right?" And you want to just reach over and slap these people. It's like, this guy's got feelings. This isn't funny to him. I think that it still weighs on him. He feels like he let an entire community down.
Yeah, because you didn't win. You had lost to the Skins the following year. And then you come back and you play the Oilers. I want to know, where were you when it was 35-3? Were you in the building? Were you watching the game? What was going on with you at that time?
I was listening to it on the radio. It wasn't a sellout because I think the Bills fans had gotten kind of punch drunk. They felt like, they're not going to make it to the Super Bowl. Nobody goes 3 times. So people were just kind of worn out. They figured out they're not going to do it. But they did. But I was listening to it on the radio, so I didn't go. And I was incredulous. I was like, oh my, what do you mean? Because every once in a while I turn it off, and you just get like so anxious, so you turn it off for 5 minutes and you turn it back on, like, and the Bills have scored again. And then then the next thing it's they're within 10, and then they're within 7, and it's or whatever it was. And it was just incredible. And as a Bills fan, that's still considered the greatest game in Bills history. And
Frank Reich.
So.
Yeah, that was great. And you know what? When you won that game, I said the Bills are going to win it all. I've never had a feeling as a Steeler fan that I knew in my heart the Bills were going to beat the Steelers. Watch that game. I said, we have no chance of beating the Bills, because I knew the momentum you had. You were a better team. Pittsburgh had home field, but you were a better team, and you came in there and destroyed the Steelers. And then you destroyed the Dolphins. And you know what's funny? You own the Marino Dolphins. They owned you in the 70s, but every big game, including those 2 playoff games, you went to Miami and beat them up. You always beat the Dolphins when it mattered.
That's right.
You were a little tougher, a little more physical, and you beat them up. Bruce Smith always was around Dan Marino's ankles. And you were always able to get the job done. Thurman Thomas always played good. You know what I liked about Thurman Thomas? I was watching his running style. He kind of scoot. He was always uncanny the way he found the hole, and he was able to get the hole, and then he had that burst. That's what I loved about Thurman Thomas, and he really would give it to the Dolphins.
And he could catch too. The thing
Yeah.
about Thurman Thomas, and I know I'm a homer when I talk about this, but like he's always compared. You always have the Barry Sanders, Emmett Smith argument. Thurman Thomas is in there too.
Oh yeah.
He led the league in total yards from scrimmage for 4 straight years.
Hmm.
That's during this whole era of Emmett Smith and Barry Sanders. So, you think about that. Thurman Thomas belongs in that conversation. And he went to 4 Super Bowls. Barry Sanders got stuck in Detroit, unfortunately. And Emmett had the good fortune of playing behind that great offensive line in Dallas.
Yeah.
So, maybe if Thurman had played behind Dallas's offensive line, it might have been different. Buffalo had a really good offensive line. We had Kent Hall. We had
Oh yeah. Ballard.
we had
Yeah.
Howard Ballard. And, we had a really good line. But, Dallas, geez.
Now you segued me right into the Dallas game. And I said the Bills are going to win. The way they beat the Oils, their team of destiny. You took the lead on them. Dallas came back. Was that fourth down stand a death nail in that game?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you come back from that?
Yeah.
They're totally demoralized.
And then they had to score. But Don Beebe, man, even when you're losing, the way the hustle play, that was amazing. And I was so happy when he won a championship ring with Green Bay.
Yeah.
And I know that the Buffalo team, they were happy for him because he was talking about how happy they were. You didn't get it done. And then you went back again and beat Montana. Think about it. You beat Elway in Montana those years.
Yeah.
And went back to 4 Super Bowls. I know you didn't win them, but nobody's doing that. That is as resilient a team effort as you're ever going to see. And I sat back and looked, and I said, wow, they beat Elway, and they beat the brakes off Kansas City. You beat Montana really bad, and they were on a roll because they had beat Houston, but you couldn't get it done, but it was a good time. Then you're going back through your rebuilding years. Now, the Buffalo's back. Now let's talk about the current Josh Allen Buffalo Bills with the great McDermott as coach. And you have a great staff. Ken Dorsey and those guys. You came back from Kansas City. How did you feel dealing with the Kansas City game? That was insane.
That was heartbreaking. You had the 13 seconds to the lexicon of Buffalo.
Oh yeah, there's a whole list.
Wide right and no goal and all these other things. Now we got 13 seconds. That was terrible. I mean, you're sitting here watching the game and you see Gabe Davis have this monster game and Josh hits him with that touchdown. You think it's over.
Yep.
But with Patrick Mahomes, it's never over with Patrick Mahomes. I love Josh Allen. I think it's Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes are the two best. But as long as Patrick Mahomes keeps beating Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes is the man. Right. So you give him the ball with 13 seconds left. How much does a guy need? He's got Tyreek Hill. He's got Travis Kelce. He's just takes them right down the field, and then they get the ball in overtime, and that's it.
And I want to see Buffalo and Kansas City again, and I want to see Von Miller. I was so upset with Von Miller out for the season.
Heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking.
And you guys are resilient. You do have a very good pass rush, even without him.
Yeah, we do. But he's that closer, he's closer. When we played Kansas City this year, he had he had a couple of pressures and a sack in the fourth quarter.
I did my podcast. I said he was a hero of the game. I had him as a hero of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big loss. I think we can win without him, especially if we can hold on to the home field advantage and play them here. I think that we can make it. We can get to the Super Bowl.
But you know what, and that's good that you want that. Selfishly, because I love the atmosphere at Arrowhead, I want the Bills to have to go there, beat the Chiefs, and slay the dragon, go their place and beat them, and then get to the Super Bowl and win it and go that way and say, man, we went there, slayed them, and then we ended up playing either the Eagles or the Cowboys. That'd be something if you beat the Cowboys in the Super Bowl. After all, you would be slaying so many dragons.
And I got to tell you, Jalen Hurts, he scares me more than, because he's got wheels.
Yes.
And Dak is a good quarterback, but Jalen Hurts, man.
And you know what Jalen Hurts does? He doesn't make mistakes. Dak will throw a pick here and there, but Jalen Hurts is not going to make that mistake.
Right, exactly. He's really he's the real deal, man. So, and they got a good defense too. I mean, so do the Cowboys. They got Diggs and they got
Yeah,
Parsons and all those guys. But um, I'm more afraid of the Eagles than I am the Cowboys.
I understand. And I want to mention this because when I do this podcast, I talk about this. Teams that haven't won having to get through that mental threshold. The Vikings, those years with Tarkenton, the Bills. And I'll even put the Cowboys there because they haven't won in so long. There's so much pressure because of the fan base and the critics. And even the Niners getting there and not winning. So there's certain teams and franchises that have so much, even the Bengals, they got there, but they haven't been able to win. There's so much pressure to win the championship. So you don't have to deal with all the demons and saying, oh, wide right, wide left, the drive. You don't want to have to deal with that no more. And there's that mental threshold. There's that game you need to win that gets you over the hump. And that's when you know you're going to win the championship. I can tell you from experience, the Steelers hadn't won since 78. When Ben Roethlisberger chased that guy down and Vanderjagt missed a kick, I knew that was the threshold they got through. I knew they were going to win the Super Bowl. I knew they were going to beat Denver and win the Super Bowl. If Buffalo has one of those games, you're going to know in your heart, you know what? We got through all this mental garbage and we slayed this dragon. Now we could be free and win a championship.
Yeah. One of the things that it's really unbearable to be a Bills fan when you're arguing with fans from across the country, and they say, well, you won't win a Super Bowl. You're not going to the Super Bowl, and their reasoning is, well, you lost 4. Well, that was a different ownership, different coaching regime. None of these players were even born when all that went down.
Yeah.
How can you compare this team to that team? It's not the same Buffalo Bills, but but you're right. I think that you start seeing little signs. Like we're starting to see the Bills get some of those calls we didn't get when we were not that good. Like, those pass interference calls some are starting to go our way now. It's almost like, well, we're getting the respect we deserve from not just from the media, but also from maybe the on-field officiating crews and, the commissioner or whatever. So you start seeing those little signs. And when you can go out and you can get a guy like Stefon Diggs.
Oh, man.
Stefon Diggs, he's my favorite player right now. He is.
Oh, yeah.
He came here and there was this, oh, he's got an ego. He's not a team player. This guy has been a team player. He's the first guy to go over and congratulate one of his teammates when he scores. He's funny. He's a community guy. Where did this bad rap come from? They just wanted to get rid of him so badly in Minnesota that they started saying all this stuff. I don't know, but what a reliable receiver he is. He can do anything. He can play. He can be the slot man and do the short routes. He can go long. He can go the intermediate routes. He can do anything. He may not be Justin Jefferson, but I mean, this guy is. Oh my God! I can't believe we have a guy like this, and we haven't had a guy like this since Eric.
You're right. I respect the Bills. That was a heartbreaking loss to the Vikings, and they came right back and won.
Yeah.
Heartbreaking loss last year against Kansas City. They said, okay, some teams, they set the franchise back 20 years of some of these bad losses, but the Buffalo, this group is so resilient. They're like, we're on a mission. Okay, we lost. We'll bounce back and come back and win the next week. And I respect that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's, again, as again, being a Pittsburgh fan, I think these Rust Belt cities around the Great Lakes, they're tough because they got to play in the bad weather, and they've got blue collar people that work in factories and work hard, and when they take their football seriously, they take the sports seriously. They're a hardy bunch. They're out there in the snow and the cold. And
you're right. And you know what? The Bettis Roethlisberger group, they were to the point they got sick and tired of hearing about the 70 Steelers. Like, we got to win for ourselves. And I think Josh Allen, they're probably sick and tired of hearing about the 4 Super Bowls. They're like, listen, let's win the Super Bowl, have our own identity.
Right. Absolutely. I couldn't imagine. I mean, it's probably a thrill to be compared to Jim Kelly, or, for Stefon Diggs to be compared to Andre Reed, and this guy to be compared to Bruce Smith. But, it's like, okay, those guys were great, but this is our time. And they didn't do it. we're here to get it done. We're here to get the job done, to finish the job that they weren't able to finish. That's the one thing. Like you get a group of the players from the '60s team that won the championship 2 years in a row, '64 and '65. And I talked to Ed Rakowski and some of the other ones, and they said, I'm in a room with Jim Kelly, and he starts, bragging about Super Bowls and all this stuff. He goes, "Hey, we're the only team that actually won it. We started and we set a goal at the beginning of the year, and we actually walked away with a trophy. What'd you guys do?" So there's that generational thing. So Josh Allen is, I'm really proud to be a part of this Buffalo Bills history and legacy, but I want to make my own chapter in it. I want, we want to win we want to win rings. Stephon Diggs is a great player. He's probably going to go in the Hall of Fame, but he doesn't want to go in the Hall of Fame without a championship ring.
Let me ask you something before I go.
Yeah.
Buffalo wins the Super Bowl. What are you going to do? What's your?
I don't know. It's going to be so exciting. I know. I already told my work that I won't be in the next day. I'll be partying somewhere. I don't normally go to bars to watch games because there's a lot of weirdos. There's a lot of experts that think they know what they're talking about, but I will probably hit a bar somewhere locally and just to celebrate with other people, just to, this catharsis of finally getting it over with and finally winning it. You as a Steeler fan, I can't imagine how it feels. You've done it, you've seen it, you've witnessed it. I haven't. So
listen, I'm gonna tell you something. As a youngster, there was nothing better than beating the Cowboys. That was the best feeling. I had to hear, and they do a lot of talking, and I had to hear it that whole week, and I let them have it when they won. And I love Bradshaw and Swan for that. So you're going to have your chance. Maybe you'll get the Cowboys or the Eagles. You're going to get your chance. Hopefully, you'll get it. This was terrific. I forgot we were doing an interview. This is like two buddies just talking. So I'm gonna put this on YouTube. Send this to every Buffalo fan. I just want to put that request so they fall in love with this show, and I'm I love Josh Allen. So if they go back to their shows, they know. So thanks a lot. You were terrific, like I knew you would be. I wish the Bills well.
Okay, thank you.